My name is Charlie Tonga, and the moment I stopped believing my family would ever show up for me happened on my wedding day, while I was fixing my hair in the mirror and trying to breathe through the nerves. My phone buzzed once, just once. I picked it up without thinking. It was a photo from my uncle. No message at first, just an image. Everyone, my parents, my brothers, my sisters, their spouses, their kids, cousins, all of them standing shoulder to shoulder on a yacht in Maui, sunburned and smiling like they were celebrating something sacred. Someone had edited a caption across the bottom in that fake handwritten font people use when they want a moment to look meaningful. Peace, family, no distractions. I stared at it for a full minute before I noticed I already had a text from my mom, sent hours earlier. "We won't make it. Don't take it personally." That was it. No call, no explanation, no apology, not even the courtesy of pretending she felt bad. I didn't reply. They knew my fiancé and I were doing a small ceremony. They knew we weren't inviting anyone outside the family. They knew how much this meant to us, especially because neither of us ever really belonged anywhere before this. My fiancé, Daniel, grew up in foster care. He never met his biological parents. When people asked who would walk him down the aisle, he always smiled and said, "No one." Not in a sad way, just honest. And me, I had a family, but they never really saw me. Not the way you're supposed to be seen. I was the quiet one, the reliable one, the one who paid for things silently and didn't ask questions, the one who was tolerated, not cherished. My whole life, I told myself that was just how families worked. You show up, you help, you don't complain, and maybe one day they'll notice. While I was standing there adjusting my dress, they were toasting cocktails in the Pacific. I didn't tell Daniel about the photo. He could tell something was wrong, but he didn't ask. He just looped his arm through mine and said we should go. The ceremony was small, quiet, bare, if I'm being honest. A few people from work showed up, more out of obligation than closeness. There was no music, no laughter, just the sound of waves in the distance, and two people trying to make the best of what was supposed to be the most important day of their lives. That night, we sat on the balcony of the Airbnb we'd rented. The city lights were beautiful, but the air felt cold. Not because of the weather, because I knew something had shifted, and it wasn't coming back. Daniel didn't say much until I closed my laptop after checking emails. He looked at me and said, "If you let them treat you like this now, they'll never stop." That was it, one sentence, but it hit harder than anything my family had ever said to me. So I opened my laptop again. I revoked access to the Family Emergency Fund, the one I created 5 years ago when my parents were drowning in debt, and my siblings kept asking for just a little help. One by one, I removed their names, every single one of them. Gone. Daniel didn't cheer. He didn't smile. He just sat beside me and let me work. But I didn't stop there. That night, I locked down every shared investment, every co-signed account, every asset I'd let them attach themselves to back when I still believed we were a unit. Everything we ever built together was now inaccessible to them, and I didn't say a word. 7 days passed. Then my father shows up at my door. He didn't knock. He slammed his fist against the door like he still owned the place, like I was 15 again and had missed curfew. I opened it without saying anything, and the first thing out of his mouth wasn't hello or how are you. It was, "What the hell did you do?" No greeting, no concern, just panic dressed up as anger. He paced the front step like a trapped animal, face already red, voice climbing before I'd even responded. I stepped aside and let him in, not because he deserved it, but because I wanted to look him in the eye when I said what I needed to say. The second he saw Daniel standing in the hallway, his energy shifted, his jaw tightened, his eyes narrowed, and then he pointed at him and said something ugly, not subtle, not ambiguous, something about Daniel getting in my head, poisoning me, turning me against my own blood. I stepped between them without thinking. "You're not going to talk to him like that. Ever." He laughed, like I was being dramatic, like this was a tantrum I'd cool down from once he explained. He started talking fast, throwing out excuses. The trip had been planned for months. The timing was bad. The wedding came out of nowhere. I reminded him we sent invitations 2 months earlier. No one responded, not one of them. His voice got louder. He said I was overreacting, said a wedding was just a day, and then he said the line I'd heard my entire life, the one that always shut me up before. "You're still part of this family, whether you like it or not." I looked at him and felt something click into place. "Not anymore," I said. He turned back to Daniel, trying again, accusing him of dragging me down, of wanting my money, of isolating me, so I'd have no one but him. Daniel didn't respond. He just stood there, calm, solid. And for the first time, I saw how small my father looked when his usual intimidation didn't work. I told him Daniel was the first person who ever made me feel like I wasn't just someone to tolerate, that he'd never asked me for money, never guilted me, never made me feel like love was something I had to earn. I didn't yell, I didn't raise my voice. I just said, "Get out." He didn't move at first. He stared at me like he was waiting for regret to show up on my face. It didn't. I repeated myself, "Leave." He slammed the door so hard the frame shook. We stood there in silence for a long time after that. I waited for the regret, that old familiar ache, the one that always followed when I chose myself over keeping the peace. It didn't come. The next day, my phone started ringing. My mom first, then my oldest brother, then my sisters. They all took turns telling the same story with different words. It was a misunderstanding. I'd gone too far. I was letting one event destroy years of closeness. There was never closeness. I didn't answer any of them. I didn't want more lies wrapped in concern. Instead, I sent one message in the family group chat, a chat they usually only used when someone needed something from me. "You chose a yacht over my wedding. Enjoy the ocean." No one replied. Not that day, not the next. That night, Daniel and I sat on the couch eating leftovers and watching a show we barely paid attention to. In the middle of it, I said something I hadn't planned. "Let's leave, just for a while. Los Angeles, maybe." He didn't ask why. He didn't hesitate. He just said, "Okay." 4 days later, we were gone. We didn't announce it. There were no dramatic goodbye messages, no cryptic social media posts, no long explanations meant to soften the blow. I just shut everything down quietly, the same way I always handled things for my family, efficiently and without asking for permission. The house went into full security lockdown. Cameras, remote access, automation, all of it. I hired a management company to handle the property and gave them one instruction: no visitors, ever, no exceptions. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell my siblings. I didn't owe them a briefing on how I was protecting what I built. By the 5th day, we were in Los Angeles. We rented a place in West Hollywood. 2 bedrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows, a view that felt more like a hotel than a home. $8,000 a month. I paid the full year in advance, not because I had to, but because I could, and because I was done living like I needed to justify my decisions to anyone. Daniel smiled when we walked in. He didn't comment on the size or the cost. He didn't ask questions. I watched the tension melt out of his shoulders in real time, like his body finally understood we were somewhere safe. Maybe it was the distance. Maybe it was the fact that for once, this space belonged to us, not to my family by proxy. I kept my business running remotely. Most of it was already automated, but I took the time to reroute everything properly. New accounts, new servers, no shared access, no joint ventures, no legacy systems tied to the family network. I severed every remaining financial connection I could find, every invisible thread that still linked me to them. Because once upon a time, I believed we were a unit. I expected backlash. I think a part of me even wanted it, some final explosion that would make everything clear and final. Instead, there was silence. 2 weeks passed before the calls started again. My oldest brother called first. He was always the one who reached out when someone needed money but didn't want to ask directly. He said he just wanted to talk, but the moment I answered, the guilt poured out. Our parents were struggling. They'd come back from the trip to find everything locked. No access to funds, no emergency reserves. My dad couldn't even refill a prescription because the card was frozen. I asked him one question. Why did you think it was okay to abandon me on the most important day of my life? He paused. Then he said, "It was just a wedding." I hung up. The next call was from my sister, the one who always told people we were the closest. Even though she only showed up when she needed help moving or had another unpaid ticket, she tried a softer approach. She said Mom was crying, that Dad hadn't slept, that everyone thought I was being manipulated by a man with no roots. That's when Daniel took the phone out of my hand. "We're not interested in being part of your games anymore," he said, and ended the call. 2 more days passed. Then my mom texted, "You're letting him ruin everything. We're your family. He's just passing through." That message sat in my chest for a long time, not because it hurt the way it used to, but because it confirmed everything I'd been afraid to admit. They never saw Daniel as permanent. They never saw us as real. They thought he was temporary. And maybe worse, they thought I still needed their approval to build a life without them. That night, I told Daniel I wasn't going back. Not to them. Not to that house. Not to the version of myself who believed love had to be earned through loyalty and silence. He nodded and said, "Good." We opened a bottle of wine and sat on the balcony watching the city glow. For the first time in years, no one was asking me for anything. No one was reminding me what I owed. No one was pretending I only mattered when I was useful. It was quiet and I wasn't lonely. I should have known the quiet wouldn't last. It was 5 weeks after we moved to Los Angeles. Things had finally started to settle into something that felt almost normal. Daniel was sleeping better. I was working without that constant low-level anxiety humming in my chest. There were even moments during the day when I didn't think about my family at all, which felt like a small miracle. Then my phone rang at 3:12 a.m. Unknown number. Normally, I would have let it go to voicemail, but something in my half-awake brain told me to answer. The voice on the other end was shaky, rushed, and familiar enough to make my stomach drop. "Charlie," he said, "your house is gone." It was Mark, my old neighbor. We weren't close, but he had my number in case anything serious ever happened. He didn't waste time explaining gently. He just said it. There was a fire. It started fast. By the time the trucks arrived, the place was already collapsing. He said it didn't look right. Too quick, too clean. They were saying electrical, but he didn't buy it. I sat straight up in bed. "What do you mean, gone?" I asked, even though I already knew. "Completely," he said. "There's nothing left." I hung up and opened the security app on my phone. All 6 camera feeds were black. Dead. I checked the system logs. The last recorded motion was at 2:47 a.m. Then everything dropped to 0. No signal, no error message, just silence. Daniel was awake now, watching me from across the bed. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't interrupt. He just waited. I called the property manager next. He confirmed it. Full loss. Total destruction. Then he added something that made my hands go cold. There were signs of forced entry. The front door was broken in. A second-floor window, too. The fire department had flagged it for investigation. I thanked him and hung up. That was when the weight of it hit me. Not just the house, but what was inside it. Paper contracts from the early days of my company. Original agreement books. Old hard drives. Personal backups. Financial records I never uploaded anywhere because I didn't trust the cloud. Things I kept there because it was supposed to be safe. All gone. And the worst part was this. Only one group of people knew what that house meant to me. Only one group had ever benefited from it. Only one group would even have a reason to want it erased. I didn't say that out loud, not even to Daniel. The next morning, I started digging. I pulled transaction histories from every account tied to the old trust. I thought I'd closed every pathway, but one card slipped through, a shared expense card I'd completely forgotten existed. I traced the last activity. 2 days before the fire, it was used at a hardware store 10 miles from the house. 3 red plastic gas cans. The name on the transaction made my stomach drop. My youngest brother. I stared at the receipt for a long time. It wasn't proof, not enough for the police, but it wasn't nothing, and it was more than enough to tell me this wasn't an accident. 5 days later, my mom called. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to hear what she had to say. She didn't waste time easing into it. She was already crying, said she missed me, said the family wasn't the same without me, said she wished things had gone differently. Then she said, almost casually, "We heard about the fire. Thank God you weren't there. That could have been awful." I didn't say a word, because I hadn't told anyone when it happened. I hadn't told anyone we weren't in the house. There were no news articles yet. No public report. Nothing. But they knew. That night, Daniel and I sat on the balcony staring at the city. Neither of us needed to say it out loud. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was war. Up until the fire, everything I'd done had been defensive. I cut access. I drew boundaries. I walked away. I told myself distance was enough. That if I stopped engaging, they'd eventually accept it and move on. The moment my mother revealed she knew details no one should have known, something inside me shifted. I wasn't scared. I wasn't even angry in the way I expected to be. I was focused. This wasn't just about a house. It was about the wedding they skipped, the years of being sidelined, the way they treated my marriage like a phase, the money they felt entitled to, the silence when I needed them, and the panic when they needed me. The fire wasn't the beginning. It was the confirmation. I started compiling everything. Security logs, old emails, text messages, backup footage from a neighbor's doorbell camera across the street. It wasn't great quality, but it was enough. At 2:41 a.m., a familiar car rolled slowly down the street and parked. At 2:53 a.m., it was gone. You couldn't see faces. The license plate was partially obscured, but I knew that car. It belonged to my youngest brother. Still not enough for the police, not yet, but enough for leverage. Daniel watched me build the file without interrupting. After a while, he asked quietly, "What are you going to do with all this?" "I'm going to make sure they never recover from it," I said. He didn't flinch. He didn't tell me to calm down or take the high road. He just nodded once and said, "Then I'm with you." I contacted an attorney I knew through work, the kind of man who reads contracts like chessboards and doesn't ask moral questions when the law is clear. I laid everything out and told him I wasn't ready to press charges yet. I wanted every remaining thread cut, every asset locked, every account frozen, every loophole closed. Within 72 hours, it was done. And then I made the call that changed everything. There was a mid-sized logistics company my father technically owned. On paper, it was his. In reality, I'd financed it during its early years when banks wouldn't touch him. The paperwork was sloppy. No one expected me to ever look closely. They assumed I trusted them. I did look. There was a clause buried deep in the agreement, a performance milestone he missed 2 years earlier. The consequence was automatic reversion of controlling interest. To me. They never noticed. I exercised it immediately. Sold the controlling shares to an outside group within days. Clean, legal, irreversible. Overnight, their financial safety net vanished. The calls started almost instantly. Siblings calling siblings, parents calling cousins, panic rippling outward, blame bouncing from person to person. I didn't answer any of it. Then one morning, while Daniel and I were eating breakfast, the front desk of our building buzzed. "He's here again," the doorman said. "Your father." I told them to send him away. But Daniel stood up. "No," he said, "let's end this face to face." We went down together. My father looked smaller than I remembered. His shirt was wrinkled. His voice was tired. He started talking before we even stepped outside. Said they made mistakes. Said they were wrong. Said I was destroying everything. Said we built all of this together. I looked at him and said, "You burned it." Daniel stepped forward before I could say anything else. "You let your daughter's house burn down," he said calmly. "And now you're here asking for mercy because the money's gone." My father snapped, turned on him like he always did, accused him of manipulation, of brainwashing, called him a parasite. I pulled my phone out and hit record. "Say that again," I said. "Say exactly what you just said." He froze. "You think this is about money," I continued. "You think you can insult the only person who ever stood by me and I'll come running because things are hard now. No. You burned that bridge the moment you chose a yacht over my wedding." He didn't argue. He didn't apologize. He just turned and walked away. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel anything watching him leave. The peace didn't arrive all at once. It came in layers. First, it was the absence of noise. No more late-night texts from my mom pretending everything was fine. No more calls from my brothers circling money without saying the word. No more family group chats filled with fake laughter and inside jokes I was never really part of. The silence felt strange at first, like stepping into a room after the music stops. But then it felt clean. Then it was space, actual room to think, to breathe, to exist without being evaluated for usefulness. Daniel and I settled into our life in Los Angeles slowly. The apartment felt temporary at first, like borrowed air, but that faded. It became ours in small ways. A chipped mug he found at a thrift store and insisted was perfect. The way the morning light landed on the kitchen table. A blanket I bought because he kept stealing mine. Little things that didn't ask permission to matter. Work stabilized in a way I hadn't expected. Once I pulled the last tangled roots of my family out of the business, everything ran smoother. Fewer hands reaching in. Fewer emotional landmines. Better focus. Better decisions. I built new partnerships that were clean and transparent, no favors owed, no guilt baked into the contracts. For the first time, I was building something entirely mine. Daniel started sketching again. He hadn't done it in years. I'd catch him by the window with his hair tied back, pencil smudges on his fingers, completely absorbed. Seeing him like that made my chest ache in a good way. Free, unburdened. One evening, we were walking through Runyon Canyon just before sunset. His arm was looped through mine, and we were talking about nothing and everything. Then he said, almost casually, "You know, if none of this had happened, the wedding, the fire, all of it, we'd still be there, wouldn't we?" He wasn't asking, he was stating a fact. And he was right. I would have kept waiting for them to change, kept convincing myself that next time would be different, kept shrinking to fit a family that only valued me when I was useful. It took everything burning down for me to finally stop rebuilding the same house. The following week, we got married again. Not legally. We'd already signed the papers. This was just for us. We rented a small rooftop in Silver Lake. 2 friends showed up. No photographer, no speeches, just handwritten vows and a kiss as the sun dipped behind the hills. No seating chart. No disappointment. No pretending. Afterward, we walked to a taco stand and ate, sitting on the curb in our wedding clothes, laughing at nothing. I realized I hadn't checked my phone once. That night, back at the apartment, I opened my laptop one last time. The old trust account was still technically active. A small amount of money sat there, residual, forgotten. I'd avoided deciding what to do with it. I knew now. I donated every cent to a private scholarship fund for former foster kids trying to start businesses. No name attached, no announcement, just gone. When I closed the laptop, Daniel looked up from the couch and said, "You look lighter." "I am," I told him, and I meant it. There was a version of me I carried for years. The one who wanted to belong. The one who thought love was something you earned by staying quiet and paying the bill. That version wasn't angry or bitter. It was just tired. And it's gone now. In its place is this. Quiet mornings. Work that doesn't drain me. A man who never once made me feel small. A life that doesn't require permission. They may have thought they were punishing me when they abandoned me on my wedding day. Maybe they thought the fire would break me, that I'd come crawling back, desperate to be included again. All they did was give me the reason I needed to walk away for good. And now I'm free.